Welcome to another episode of Girlfriends Talking, where your story matters. I'm excited today because I get to speak to Yvette Walker. She is an author, a speaker, and a podcaster. And tonight she's going to be promoting her book, Whispering in His Ear, a devotional series. She is the founder of the Positively Joy Ministries at positivelyjoy.com, which includes a weekly podcast of the same name, a Facebook community group, along with other social media related to her ministry. And her ministry focuses on helping find joy in living a life of faith through the power of prayer and the word of God. And I don't know about you ladies, but I need a little joy in my life. This month, December, there's so much hustle and bustle and so many lists and so many shopping things to do and so many people to buy gifts for. And you got a party here and you have a party there. And in the midst of all that, sometimes we just lose our joy. So if it's your first time tuning in, grab a seat, grab a cup of coffee, tag a friend, share tonight because you're not going to want to miss my conversation with my friend Yvette Walker. Let's bring her in. Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I am well. How are you? Thank you.
I'm good. I'm loving the glasses. I'm loving the lip color.
Yes, yes.
Where are you coming from today?
I am coming from Oklahoma, in the middle of the state.
Oh, I've never been to Oklahoma before. What's the weather like?
Today it's kind of in the 50s, a little foggy, little rainy. Not too bad today.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, we're having the same weather here in Pennsylvania. I'm in a
Hmm.
little town called Chambersburg. If you're familiar with Pennsylvania, I had never heard of Chambersburg before I moved here. We're kind of in between, we're like 25 minutes from Hagerstown, Maryland,
Hmm.
and probably about 45 minutes from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be in that area sometime next spring. So, all right, I'm gonna look you up. Okay.
Yes, we got it. We have to get together. We have to definitely get
Yes,
together.
yes.
Yes, awesome. So tell my girlfriends a little bit about who is Yvette Walker.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I am a longtime journalist turned educator. I am originally from Chicago. I was always been in the church. I was born Catholic, went to church all the time. Now go to a non-denominational church with my husband's church. And I have always known God. I've always believed in him, but I haven't always been seeking. I haven't always been seeking the joy that you only get from him. And so, he kind of took me down this path and he's given me some insights. And that's where we are today with, he was the one who came up, literally, he was the one who came up. And when I say he, I mean the Lord, with the idea for the podcast, which is another story we'll get into in a minute. But that's what I'm doing right now. I have a lot of students surrounding me. Finals is next week, and so we'll be giving those finals to those students, and life is good.
So are you a professor?
I am.
Okay, at a college?
Yes,
Okay, okay. Shout out to your students.
yes, yes,
And so how'd you
exactly.
go from being a journalist to an educator to where you are now? Like,
Yeah. It's not unusual for journalists to decide, I'm going to do this for so many years and then I'm probably going to teach or I'm going to do something. I mean, that's what a lot of journalists think will happen. And
okay.
so I was working at the Oklahoman, which is in Oklahoma City. I had been there since 2006. And then in 2015, the prior editor of the paper, who is now dean of my college, called me and said, "Hey, I'd love for you to be assistant dean." And I thought it was a little early in my career. I thought that I wouldn't make that transition just yet, but it's kind of hard to turn that down. It was a great opportunity. And I love working with students. Even while I was a journalist, I was always coaching students. I was always involved in summer journalism workshops with high school students who want to go into this. I was always in some way working with students. And it just seemed like a natural thing. Now, I wondered if I would miss the newsroom too much, when I first got there. But the energy from the students is just so electric that I don't miss it as much as I thought I would.
Okay, great, great. And so then how did you transition to podcasting?
So, all right, most of us, well, I shouldn't even say most of us, those of us who were fortunate to be able to work from home or stay home, this was during COVID. A lot of podcasts were created during COVID, that is for sure. And I thought that I wanted to do this podcast. I'd always wanted to do a podcast, but for some reason it was always too complicated. I couldn't figure it out. There was always some kind of barrier for me to start this podcast. And the podcast was going to be on what I call the intersection of beauty, hair, and politics. Because
Mm.
it's a great subject, and there are other people talking about it. But I was home that day, and I had my computer, and I said, okay, this can't be too hard. I'm just going to sit down here and figure it out, right? And so I had done that. I was going to get started, and the Lord said, no, it won't be on that. It will be on joy.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, okay. I don't know, number one, what you mean, Lord, and what about joy? And so what am I going to call this thing? Because when the Lord tells you to do something, you say, yes, Lord, right? So I
Mhm.
said, yes, Lord, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know what I was going to call it. So I said, okay, we're just going to call this Finding Joy. That was going to be the name of it. And I very quickly realized that there's a lot of other podcasts out there that have a name like that. And I said, well, I probably should change it. In fact, if you go all the way back to the first episode, you'll hear me say, welcome to Finding Joy. So I said, okay, no, we need to get a more unique name, Lord. What can it be? And he said, Positively Joy. And I said, um, well, okay, but Lord, that's not grammatically correct because, I'm a word person. And it's not grammatically correct, which
Okay.
is why I know the Lord gave me that name. I mean, the grammatical thing would be positively joyful or positively joyous. So I actually did not come up with that name. But since I embraced it, because again, that's what we do. With Lord tells you to do something.
Yeah,
I have found that lot of people love it. They think it's kind of catchy, or
I
whatever.
do.
So if it had been me, with my human ways, I would have changed it. I would have done something else, right? But the Lord knows what the Lord knows. So
Yeah,
that's how it started.
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, the whole thing about podcasting, kind of with girlfriends talking, that happened, and I'm like, Lord, how am I going to do this? He's like, just do it, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been figuring it out on my own, little by little, and I'm sure that there's so much more to learn, but it's fun. And honestly, I didn't think about doing a podcast because we were doing just video interviews, and
Mm.
then somebody said, "Well, Ramona, if you got the video, all you got to do is download the audio, and there's your podcast." And I thought, okay, and so that's how that happened.
No, that makes sense. And I'm just the opposite because I come from the print background, newspapers, websites. I'm a behind the camera kind of girl. So it would made more sense for me just to do the podcast, but I am trying to get out. I mean, not out of my shell. I'm an extrovert, but just get used to speaking in front of the camera and letting people see my face. It's weird.
Well,
It's
then I
weird.
have to. Well, I love it. I love it. So, and I've been following you for a little bit, and so I'm just gonna throw this plug in now for those that are watching and don't know. Yvette Walker. So we have this conference that we came up with last year. Because nobody, with COVID and the weather in February, not having to worry about travel and things, we came up with the Encourage Conference. And so last year was our first conference. And this year is going to be our second conference, and we're going to be speaking on joy. And
Yes.
Yvette is going to be one of our guest speakers.
Yeah. Woo woo.
Woo-hoo!
Yes.
And
Thank you
so
so
that's,
much for
mhm.
asking. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
so
so
excited.
excited. That's going to be February 4th. It's going to be online. I can give it some information later after we're done talking, but it's going to be online. You can come in your jammies, invite some girlfriends. It's
Mhm.
going to be from 9 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. We'll have so much fun, but I can't wait because you're going to bring us joy. And after this year's been crazy, we want to start a new
Yeah.
year with some joy.
Yeah. You are not wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
okay, so now you're a journalist and you're teaching, you're a podcaster. but you're a writer and you've
Hmm.
written these books, and you have a series. It's called Whispering in His Ear devotional series. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's right. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so I have a question. So the
Hmm.
question is, do the two books work together and how? So tell us a little bit about your books.
Yes, yes. You know what? I guess I should have them in front of me. They're actually up. I should have. I will grab
I
them in a
see
minute.
them.
They're
Go
up
grab
there.
it.
Okay, I'm gonna grab them
Go
really,
grab
really
it.
quickly. I should have
This is
had
my
them
show.
ready.
We
Just
can do what we
one
want to
second.
do. Love it.
All right, I'm gonna put my headphones back on so
Okay.
the sound is good. So these two books work together, but you also can use them, independently. So Whispering in His Ear actually has a new cover, but this book was uh, released last year in 21. It's a devotional, month-long devotional where you get essays, life lessons that the Father has given me, a prayer to pray, an exercise to do, and some room to jot down your thoughts. So after this came out, I said, you know what? It would be great to create um, kind of a companion study guide to this, but also could work on its own. And that is called God's Voice and How to Listen. Now, the difference, it's much bigger. You can see this is 6 by 9. This is 8.5 by 11. It's large print, so it's very easy to read. There's more room in here to journal, and it's a deeper kind of exploration of scripture and the discussions that we had in the original book. But again, this also lives on its own. So we're talking about we talk about joy obviously on my podcast, but a lot of the idea about joy for me and the lack of joy that I had was that I felt like I was not able to hear from the Father. Growing up as a girl, I felt very closely connected to him. I felt like I could hear him um, clearly. I felt like we could talk. And then I grew up, graduated college, started working, became an adult, got into the world, right? And his voice went away. And that made me really, really sad. And to be honest, for a long time, I thought it was my fault that I wasn't worthy to hear him, that he didn't want to talk to me anymore because of something that I had done. And that's not true at all. I just had to remember and retrain myself to listen for his voice. He's never stopped talking to me or anybody else. So the idea for the books came from that, when I had kind of a breakthrough at a Christian retreat and began to be able to hear his message for my life again. Now, life was great. My career was great, but there was just, career was great, friends, all of that, but there was something missing. I mean, it was palpable. There was something missing, and I didn't really know what it was. Now, since I started the podcast, and even before the podcast, he began to give me messages to write. I decided to really start the whole Positively Joy ministry area because I am a communicator. I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. I have always done that as being a journalist. Of course, I'm an editor, I'm a writer, but I never really used the skills of communication that he has given me in his honor and glory. That's what
Mhm.
I wanted to finally do. So I started writing down the messages he was giving me, which turned into the first book. I started the podcast and then decided to come up with the second book, again, God's Voice and How to Listen, which is great for small groups, study groups, people who want to share the message, and things like that. So they are related, but they can also be used independently.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you know this, but one of the ministries I have at our local jail, especially during the pandemic, I've always done it, but during the pandemic, even more because we couldn't go in to visit them, is I take books into the jail. And so
Oh,
usually a lot of our authors that come and that I interview them, we work it out till, I get their books into the jail. So I'll talk to you off
yes,
camera
I would be happy to give you
about
some
that
tips. Yes.
because what better resource other than the Bible. Obviously, we get the Bibles in there, but they have so much time on their hands, and what
Mhm.
better way than to journal and to read great Christian authors like yourself. And so, yeah, that's my, and I don't mind begging. I buy the
You
books
don't have
and
to beg. You don't
no,
have to
no,
beg.
no. I'm saying, well, what I do is I buy the books and then I call up or text some of my pastor friends.
Mhm.
And I'm like, hey, I just had this author on and she's got this really good book and I just brought a case of books. And they're like, here you go. Who do I write the check to?
Oh,
So
bless
yeah, that's
you.
that's what I mean that I don't mind begging. So yes, because what better way than to get, they have libraries of books and I've seen the books that come in there and
Yeah.
you know, you want them reading some good stuff, right? Some good
Absolutely.
material and definitely to point them to Christ. And so I'm excited to be able to, but we'll talk about that later. So
Okay. Okay.
so share a little bit about your testimony, you
Absolutely.
know.
So the testimony is this: you can be a believer all your life. You can go to church every Sunday. This was me. I believed in God. Baptized as a baby, went to Catholic school, went to Catholic high school, kept going to church. Never stopped any of that. But you can be a believer and still not understand that there is more. The full richness of the Lord. The idea about joy, when he told me to do this podcast on joy, and I was like, okay, well, what about joy? So, like I've been learning. He's been revealing to me over time, I believe, what the message is. And the message is that the only real joy that will complete us as humans comes from the Father.
Amen.
People go chasing a lot of things to find joy. They chase people, they chase substances, alcohol, things like that, right? And they chase food. I've had a food issue all my life, a weight issue. So there's all these things that we chase, but the only thing we should be chasing is the Lord. And we can find that in my signature, well, not my, but the signature scripture that we use for the show in John 15. And I love the fact that it comes from John 15, because John 15, everyone knows it for the vine and the branches story. Like, that's the
Mhm.
famous story, right?
Mhm.
But if you keep reading and go down to verse 9, 10, 11, I kind of call it Jesus's DIY. He basically says, if you keep my commands and remain in my love and the Father's love, that my joy will be in you and your joy will be complete. That's it.
I like that. I'm typing that in to put it on the screen. I like that. Jesus
Mhm.
is DIY, right?
DIY, do it yourself.
DIY. Oh, gotta fix
And
it.
really, it's not doing it yourself because you're doing it with him, right? But I mean,
Right.
it doesn't have to be
DIY.
complicated. Now, um, it's he wants us to be filled with joy, but he wants us to be filled with the joy that comes from him. And
Amen.
so that's what he's revealed to me over the years I've had this podcast. But it really does make sense, and it's true. I definitely feel like there's not a hole anymore. And I tell people this: love your children, love your husband. I love my husband, but my husband does not complete me,
Amen.
right? The Lord completes me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
we as women sometimes we put a lot of pressure on our husbands,
Yeah,
on
we
our
do.
boyfriends, fiancés
Yeah.
to complete us. And I think it's because we've grown up watching these movies, right? These love movies
Yeah.
where
Oh,
boy meets
yeah.
girl
Now, especially all the Christmas movies that are out now.
on
Yeah.
Hallmark, right? Boy
Yeah.
meets girl, they fall in love and they live happily ever after. And we put so much pressure on these men to complete us, but only God can complete us.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
once we take them off that pedestal or wherever we put them on to make them, stressed out to try to complete us, once we let them go and release
Mhm.
them,
Yeah.
it's freeing for them. And then God's like, okay, yes, now I can step in and, fill that hole.
Yeah, so
So
true. So
yeah,
true.
these movies. so So you grew up in Chicago. Tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about growing up in Chicago, how that was. Now, my grandmother lived in Chicago. She's now
Okay.
in Melrose Park. God love her. She'll
Mhm.
be 103 December the 10th.
Oh, bless her.
Yes, but when my parents split up when I was a little girl, well, when they were in the process of splitting up, my mom sent me on this weekend trip with my grandmother that turned into 2 years, 3 years later.
Oh,
Anywho,
wow.
but we lived in Chicago.
Mhm.
And for the life of me, I can't tell you what the name of the school was because I kind of zoned out during that time because I was
Mhm.
homesick, you can imagine.
Oh, sure.
I never knew a 7-year-old could be depressed, but I was depressed. But
Mhm.
yeah, tell me a little bit how it was growing up in Chicago.
Yeah, so I grew up on the South Side of Chicago. I guess you could say lower middle class, whatever, that is. Went to so in Chicago, at least during, in my youth, public schools could be a little dicey. And because my mother wanted to raise me up in the church, I went to a parochial school, I went to Catholic school.
And those are good schools, let me tell you. You
Mhm.
probably could verify that you got a good education, right?
Oh yeah, definitely got a good education.
Mhm.
And so on the south side of Chicago, which definitely is a multicultural part of the city. Um, when I was during that time, my neighborhood was mostly African American, but not always. It was definitely multicultural. There were other peoples from other races there. It was a great time. I grew up in the '70s. I'm a '70s kid.
I was born in '69.
Okay, okay. And so it was a good time, and people cared about each other and communities were tight. I remember block parties. We
Yes.
don't have that anymore,
No, we
right?
don't.
So no, it was great. Chicago though has snow. So there were the great winters of Chicago and people getting stuck and people putting lawn chairs out on the street to guard your parking place.
'Cause, yeah, after you shoveled for an hour
I know.
and
Do
then
you remember
somebody
that?
comes in and parks in your spot.
I
Yeah.
know. I know, right? I mean, Chicago's a big city. It is definitely big city, and but Chicago still was a friendly city.
Mhm,
And I went away after graduation and started working in my journalism career and moving around. So I haven't lived in Chicago since then. But it is a friendly city, or I remember it as a friendly city.
mhm.
And so much to do there. I mean, it was just great. I lived on the south side, but I went to high school on the north side. So I
Okay.
had a long,
Commute.
commute every day, and I went through downtown.
Okay.
So going through downtown every day, and I could get off the bus and we could go look around, my girlfriends and I. So we had fun.
Yeah, I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey. We call it
Mhm.
Brick City. And
Mhm.
so, similar thing. My parents, so I'm the youngest of four. My siblings went from like the projects to like an apartment
Mhm.
till then when my parents bought the house. And then, surprise, surprise, my mother wasn't expecting any more children, and God had other plans. And so, um, the neighborhood was mostly Caucasian.
Mhm.
We were the first Hispanic, Latino, Puerto Rican family to move in. And
Mm.
then to my right and my left were the first African American, Mr. and Mrs. King and Mr. and Mrs. Martin. And when we were growing up, if our parents were home and something happened, we went to our neighbors.
Yes. Mhm.
I remember one time my brother and my sister got into a fight, and somehow something wind up breaking, and Jackie wind up getting, cut under her chin. And so they ran next door because, one of our neighbors was
Mhm.
a nurse. And so she came and did her thing, and my parents were home, and you could do that. And when the street lights came on, you knew it was time to go home. And we played together.
Oh.
And during the summers, the fire hydrant, we'd have the water, and the cars would come. We have our little can with the water. Like, no, don't wet. I just washed my car. Don't wet. It's okay. Go, 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 go. And then we let it
Yeah.
go. And
Yeah.
it was fun. Like you said, it was fun back
It was.
then.
When you talked about oh gosh, what did you say? You just said something that I would really connected with. Oh yeah, going over to the neighbor's house. So my mother was a nurse, and my father, my both my parents worked full time, right? So after elementary school, I would go over to the neighbor's house because sometimes my sister, she might have had to work because she was older than me. And the same thing, go over to the neighbor's house and wait for mommy to get home. And just having that kind of relationship was really awesome.
And I had one of those neighbors in front of us. She was an Italian older woman, Mama, and I would go sit at her house. And I think that's where I was exposed to soap operas for the first time.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember her TV, and she would make pasta. And I would come home and I would tell my mother, Mama does this magic trick with her teeth. She's like, really? She's tell me more. I said, when she does her pasta, her teeth click. It was her dentures. I didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know.
It
Yeah.
was her dentures, and she'd be like,
Hmm.
watch what I could do. And she would do this homemade, pasta in this little
Wow.
machine. And yeah, and I miss those days. I
Yeah.
miss those days where you
Yeah.
knew who your neighbors were, and you could
Yeah.
trust your kids with the neighbors. And if your neighbor needed to pull the kid by the ear and bring them
Hmm.
home, it could,
Hmm.
you could do. Now you can't do that.
I
So
know.
yeah,
I know. It's sad. Yeah. Yeah.
really is, really
Yeah.
is. Okay. So tell us where we can find Positively Joy podcast.
All right. So you can find Positively Joy wherever you listen to podcasts. And I actually have a surprise. I have a surprise announcement for you.
Uh-oh.
And this might be the first place that I've announced it.
Ooh, I'm
Okay.
excited and honored.
Yes, okay. So, Whisper in His Ear, I'm just pulling it up again, is is going to be, it's already done, but it has to be released, an audiobook.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'll be an audiobook on Audible and
On Audible.
wherever you get your thing. And also I'm having it translated into Spanish.
Very good.
So it's going to be translated
Yay!
into Spanish and it will be on Audible in Spanish.
Awesome, awesome,
So
awesome.
I'm very excited about that.
Good, and I'll help you get the word out because I do have Spanish listeners,
Mhm.
and I recently started a Facebook page called Restaurando Mujeres, which is restoring women. Now, I
Oh,
can't
wow.
restore women, but I know Christ can. And
Absolutely.
so it's kind of new on Facebook. We don't have a whole lot of followers, but we've already had 2 speakers. And so that would be great to be able to promote your book to our Spanish speaking audience. I'm
I'm really
excited.
so excited about it. Yeah, I'm just so excited about it. I'm hoping to have the Spanish translation and the audio ready for Lent.
Okay.
Yes, but for Whispering His Ear, the English audio on Audible will be ready before Christmas.
Okay, before Christmas. All
Yeah,
right.
I know, I'm so excited.
Excellent.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, just go to positivelyjoy.com to get information about the books or me. You can listen to the podcast wherever you go for podcasts, but you can also listen to it at positivelyjoy.com.
Absolutely great. And then I'm just taking a peek here through my notes. It looks like your podcast is done really well as of May 2020. You had 30,000 downloads.
I'm up to 35,000 now.
That is awesome.
And somehow I ended up on a list. I'm in the top 5 of the top 10 women's podcasts based on some certain criteria. And I was like,
Okay.
really? Okay, that's nice. So I'm
Okay.
excited about that.
Wonderful. And so people are listening as far as Canada, South Africa, the
Mhm.
UK. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so your interviews, when you do interviews with people on your podcast, what type of people can we expect to listen to? Like, what do you
Mhm.
look for in your interviews?
So my listeners are mostly women, so I do have a lot of women, but I have men on there as well. And I do have different seasons. So season 4, which is the season we're in now, is all about taking God with you every day in your everyday life, being open to his promptings and finding joy in that. So the people that I've talked to have everyday stories and where they are able to rely on God just in their everyday lives. And it's not just the every Sunday thing or every Wednesday thing or whatever. So that's what we're talking about in this season. But the people range from other authors and podcasters and speakers, but sometimes musicians. I'm really excited about the fact. Are you familiar with The Chosen, the TV
Yes.
show? So I
Mhm.
had the director Dallas Jenkins on the show.
I saw that.
Yeah, yeah. A wonderful singer, Brooke Robertson, was on the show. And she's got just an amazing story basically coming back from a sexual abuse when she was a child and writing a song about it and
Okay.
confronting her abuser. So that was a really good conversation. Um, to moms talking about taking care of their families. So we have a lot of different kind of people on the show, but we always try to bring it back to joy. And this season, talking about taking God with you in your everyday life.
Okay. So which interview or conversation has been the most surprising or the most memorable, or maybe something that you didn't know that was kind of like an aha moment for you?
So it's gonna be hard to pick one, but I'll
I know.
pick
Okay.
three. I'll pick three.
Okay.
So one, of course, was being able to talk to Dallas Jenkins, and
Yes.
not only talk to
How did
him.
that happen? Like,
Well,
how did you connect?
so I went to a conference. I went to the NRB, the National Radio Broadcaster Religion Broadcaster Conference, and had a chance to talk to him there. But later, I was on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is a social audio platform. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I used to have a show on there called, or a room called the House of Joy, but you can't do everything, so I let that go. But when I had it, one day we were talking, and guess who pops up? We were talking about The Chosen that day, and I see, because you see like a little icon. So I see appear Dallas Jenkins in the room. And I said, "Well, hello, Dallas. Apparently, we have Dallas Jenkins in the room." And I was just joking. I thought it was somebody else. But then he spoke, and it was him. And he just showed up in the room, which was so fun. So that was fun and surprising. And he's just, he's a very gracious person. He talks to anyone who wants to talk to him, can talk to him. He's just such a gracious person, and is such a is not big-headed in any way. He talks about his own failures before. So definitely check out, if you haven't heard it, check out those two
Okay.
episodes. Then another one was talking to a gentleman who practices centering prayer, which was kind of more famous several years ago, but it's just quieting yourself and centering yourself and not saying anything, but being open to God's prompting, which I'm really big into, and letting God's word come to you, and shooing everything else out of your mind. Like, if your grocery list pops into your head, come back to a word. There's like a word that you would use. Of course, mine is joy. So, but you don't say anything unless you need to recenter yourself. And that was an interesting thing, because we actually did it on the episode just for a little while. That was really pretty interesting. And then another one was that I had, again, Catholic upbringing. There's a gentleman on YouTube who has a rosary show, and they practice the rosary. I think a lot of people don't know what that is, who aren't Catholic. They don't understand what it is. And so we did a show on the rosary, and we said the rosary on the show, which was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, I had my brother, Pastor Angel Cartagena, on
Hmm.
my show one day, and his wife uh, put a comment. She says, "Ask your brother about what's in his hand." And I hadn't noticed anything in his hand, but I guess since
Hmm.
she's in the same room with him, so I said, "Angel, what do you have in your hand?" And he says, "I have a rosary."
Hmm.
And so before we, got attacked for, whatever, because you know what was coming after that, he
Yeah.
explained um the reason why he had it in his hand. And
Hmm.
that was new for me. And so I'm definitely going to go back and listen to your interview on that, because I'm curious to see if it's kind of the same thing, the reasons why my brother does it. But I was like, that makes sense.
He explains. I mean, most people who know the rosary tend to be Catholic, but everyone could do it. He explains where it came from. It's about God and the Mother of God, and the prayers are talking about God and the Mother of God, and where the prayers come from. They're biblically sound, because basically, it's the prayer to Mary basically comes from the
Scripture.
Bible, comes from scripture. And then, of
Hmm.
course, the Our Father, we know where that came from. So it's just
Hmm.
a lot of people are not familiar with what that is, or may think
Hmm.
it's weird, or may think it's kind of, I don't know, idolish, but
Right.
it's really not. So
It's not.
that was an interesting show, and we actually did pray the rosary at the end of the show.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up,
Yeah,
Catholic.
yeah.
You said something about a lot of snow in Chicago, and it took me back to I was baptized when I was probably about 6 months old
Mhm.
at the Basilica in Newark, New Jersey. Look that up later, and it's a beautiful church.
Mhm.
But my brother tells the story of it snowed, and this was, we're talking April. I was born in October, so they did my baptism in April,
Mhm.
and it snowed, and there was a lot of snow. And my mom's like 4 foot something tiny. My dad's 6'2". So you're
Yeah.
like, where'd you get the height? I got my height from my dad, but my brother, who was 7 years older than me, his responsibility was my mom handed me over to him and said, now you get her over to the church safely
Yeah.
because I got to try to walk in the snow. And so he did. And
Mhm.
of course, we had all this food, and nobody really showed up, just like, my godparents and stuff. And so we probably had leftovers for a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, no,
it reminded me
it
of
can
that.
snow, it has snowed in Chicago in May before.
Hmm. Yeah,
Not a lot, but
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good memories.
So, okay, so that was okay, so the chosen, the
Mhm.
prayer, and
And the rosary.
the
But
rosary.
there've
Yeah.
been but there I mean, it's hard to pick. There's been so many
Hmm.
good ones. Like, I really enjoyed listening to the singer-songwriter and her story about abuse and how she confronted that abuser, because she felt like she needed to do that before she went public with this song. And then, gosh, there's just been so many. There's been, lots of people who are able to give really good coaching advice that I've talked to over the years. Just a ton of people who are just so wise and who, God has granted them wisdom. I've talked to a comedian before.
Oh, I
Uh,
love comedy.
yes, yes, a Christian comedian, and just all good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother and we like to I love to laugh. Like laughter
Yes.
is medicine to my soul.
Me too.
And I'm always cutting up and acting like a clown. And my brother and I get each other. So for example, on Facebook, he tagged me. He's like, this is so you. And it was a picture of someone's shower with like a shampoo bottle and a tambourine on the rack that you put over your water spout.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, why is this you? And so we joke and carry on, but it's all in good fun.
Hmm.
And because, we need some joy. We need some joy in
Yes.
our life, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so if you can leave us, if there's something that I didn't ask, if something you didn't share, if you could just leave us with one thing tonight, what would that be?
I just want to remind people that joy is not a feeling, it's faith. And we can be walking in the lows and in the depths and still find joy in the Lord because he's there with us and he's walking with us. So, don't just feel like you have to be happy all the time. That's not going to happen, and he didn't guarantee that, but he
Right.
did guarantee and he committed to us that he would be with us in the highs of our lives and the lows. So joy is not a feeling, it's faith.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. And quickly, where was this picture taken?
Oh wow. So that was taken in Oklahoma on the top of a parking garage, and in the back that's a cathedral that you can see in
Okay.
the background.
I
Yeah.
love that picture.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, sis. Well, listen, thank you so very much for
Okay, great.
spending time with us tonight. Tell your husband I said thank you, thank you, thank you. Because anytime you're talking to someone on a show, you're taking time away from him. So tell him I
Mhm.
said thank you.
I will.
Let me know when you're in town so that we can connect. And when
I
I'm in
will.
your neck of the woods, I'll let you know so that we can connect. Don't disappear. I'm going to put you in the green room to say goodbye, and then I'll come back and we'll chat a little bit. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Ladies, thank you for joining us tonight. If you have not done so, please go check her podcast, Positively Joy. And you can catch that anywhere you listen to podcasts. Pick up her book. Now's a perfect time if you have a family member, a neighbor, a teacher, and you're not sure what to grab them. Her book her series, Whispering in His Ear devotional series, will make a perfect gift for just about anyone, really. And so I love you all with the love of Christ. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you do that today. I love you, and we'll see each other next time. Goodbye.